night is dark and full of theories.
What if the Starks always had giants? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. King Torrhen Stark stares at the missive that has just arrived by Raven this morning. He had not expected any new reports, and certainly not from who it came from. The letter was not signed, but he sees the sigil of the King of the Rock and the Kings of the Reach. As he unrolls the letter and examines its contents, trepidation and excitement war within him. It is an invitation to join their coalition against the Targaryens to halt their conquest of the Seven Kingdoms. Both kings promise to levy their hosts and raise a massive army in order to confront Aegon Targaryen and his abominable sister wives. The king in the north is pleased to hear that the other knights see that the other houses take this threat as seriously as him. Word of Harrenhal's destruction had just started filtering in north, bringing tales of an entire house laid low, of great towers going up like candles. While he has little love for Harren the Black or any of his line, he does recognize that anyone capable of destroying his line so easily will not stop there. House Doradon's fall is proof of that, and seeing the other kings being so proactive is a good sign. Yet he is less certain about their plan. They intend to march out and confront Aegon with all his strength upon the fields of battle. It is true that their army can far outnumber whatever levies the Dragon King can muster, but it was not armies that brought him this far. It was dragons. The kings of the Vale also declined their offer, hoping that their natural defenses would protect them. Torrhen was tempted to follow their example and close off the neck, but he doubts that that would work either. Those beasts of war are unlike anything he's ever seen. Arrows are useless against them, and ballista are too inaccurate to take them down. They are like beasts from a legend. To defeat them, he would need some of their own, but that was what bothers him. Torrhen closes his eyes and thinks back to when his father had told him, when he had become lord, of the ancient pacts that they had signed with the beings of this land, the agreements of blood contracts signed.
You seem deep in thought, brother. Wouldn't you be, were you in my place? How am I to respond to these Targaryens? I thought that the Gardeners and the Lannisters were planning to confront the Targaryens. If you were lucky, they would take care of the problem for you. You were too smart to think that is the case. Troubles like this rarely go away unless you make them. They offer me the third seat in their alliance if I march out with all my swords. Together we may boast close to 90,000 swords, yet will that be enough? Would 100,000 be enough? No, they won't. Not against something that can fly up and avoid them. All they will do is feed their men into the dragon's jaws. You will need something else. I am of the same mind, but the question is, should we consider this? The giants. You've spent much time with them. Some of my bannermen even claim you are half giant yourself. Only where it counts. But if you are concerned about their loyalty, don't. You have been good to the giants. Their king has not forgotten how you aided them during the winter 3 years back. You gave them onions and fish, so ask and I can promise you their clubs. Very well then. Ride out to their homes and rouse the people. I will do what I can to stall them for time.
As his brother takes his leave, Torrhen gets back to his letter. He now has an idea of what to say. The reply comes soon after, promising to support this coalition, but urges them to be cautious. He says it will take time to gather his levies. They should avoid conflict with the Targaryens for the time being. Yet, when the coalition receives this letter, the kings of the Rock and Reach refuse to wait. The fall of Harrenhal has spooked them, and they worry their kingdoms might be next. The North and Vale might be able to wait behind their mountains and swamps, but they do not have that opportunity. They reject these plans and decide to confront the Targaryens themselves. Both kings muster an army, numbering close to 60,000 men, standing as the largest army the Seven Kingdoms has seen since the Endel invasion. They muster their army in the Reach and intend to cross the riverlands and sweep across it, and then drive the army across the sea. To block their path, the Targaryen host is a fifth of the size, but overhead are 3 dragons. Rather than stopping, they decide to give battle. King Meryn IX orders his men to rush forward and hug the enemy lines, intent on closing the distance as quickly as possible. That battle will be harsh, but he reasons the Targaryens will be less willing to unleash their dragons with the soldiers this so close. The entire army begins a full offensive, their heavy cavalry smashing into their Targaryen center. In an attempt to prevent themselves from being outflanked, they extend their lines, which leaves their formation brittle. King Loren easily sweeps past the few horsemen that the Targaryens field, driving them off the field. There was hardly a battle as these men broke like glass. Without cavalry support, the army begins to outflank the Targaryen army and aims to keep them trapped and destroy them. Above them, the three dragons continue to hover above, circling around and waiting for the chance to strike, though with how close their soldiers are, there is little they can do. However, things do not go according to plan, as rather than giving ground, the Targaryen forces simply begin to retreat. There are no horns being sounded or flags raised. Some men simply begin running away. They throw down their weapons and start to flee through the rear, where the Lannister men are yet to outflank them. As these few men retreat, panic begins to spread as more soldiers turn and run away. There is no regard or any efforts to organize their retreat. It simply seems like they have routed. When Myrn sees this, he is momentarily stunned, as this battle far surpasses his expectations. Yet it makes sense. Many of their soldiers were from recently conquered houses who had little reason to remain loyal. Then he shouts for his men to chase after them. The Reach's heavy horse turns and gallops after the fleeing men, while the infantry moves towards the camp, intent on looting it. The battle is forgotten, as, in the Coalition's eyes, the war has already been won. Aegon watches all this from atop Balerion and chuckles to himself. It was just as he predicted. Beside him, Visenya watches him, but raises a hand. The time to strike is not yet. Though Rhaenys wishes to help their fleeing soldiers, Visenya orders her back. They wait until the Lannister and Gardner cavalry are far ahead of their infantry, and then they strike. The three dragons descend upon the great masses of foot soldiers who belatedly realize their dangerous situation. But then the dragons all open their mouths, and three pillars of fire sets the entire battlefield alight. From shouts of victory, these turn to screams of panic as men are burned alive in their armor. They scream, and their infantry scatters like mosquitoes, moving to the four winds. Loren and his cavalry turn just in time to see this. He organizes his horsemen to stop and tries to rally them in order to ride back, but this is where Aegon springs his own trap. While the Targaryens' heavy horses did retreat, that was a feigned retreat, and a short distance away, Orys Baratheon lay waiting, with longbowmen that the cavalry would flee behind. They unleash fire upon the Lannister men as they try to rally, while the horses crash into them. The King of the Rock screams and tumbles over as he takes an arrow in his chest. The entire army is thrown into chaos, and in the next hour the battle comes to an end. Loren is taken alive, but Myrn is consumed by the dragonfire, ending this coalition before they can even leave the Reach. In the coming weeks, Loren surrenders to the Targaryens and is stripped of his kingship. Meanwhile, House Gardner is completely wiped out, and in their place, House Tyrell has risen as one of the few houses that did not send soldiers to aid them. Word of this disaster spreads faster than expected, even faster than the burning of Harrenhal, as with this victory, the two richest and most powerful kingdoms fall into the fold of Aegon Targaryen. Those that remain are those on the fringes, isolated and cut off from each other. Torrhen Stark is acutely aware of this situation and is certain that meeting Aegon in an open battle would be suicidal. So instead, while his brother rallies the giants, he focuses on diplomatic fronts. He sends representatives to the Targaryens, offering peace terms. He will make an alliance, even marrying one of his cousins to Aegon. However, he will not surrender his kingship, and advises them that winter is coming, and not even the dragons will be able to survive their winter. When Aegon hears this, he rejects this notion, and says that he will only accept total submission. Torrhen rejects this offer and continues to assemble his army as well, as sending Lord Roderick Bolton to lead a host down to Moat Cailin and fortify it as best they can while he prepares his army. Meanwhile, in the empty halls of Sea Dragon Point, Brandon leads a small contingent of men towards the realms of the giants. It is a land little traveled, and few people even know of the giants beyond rumors, as no one ever travels there. Yet Brandon is one of the exceptions. He rides through the hills without any fear. Though only a bastard, he was raised alongside his brother by their father, King Harrenhal Stark, and was entrusted with the same secrets, including those of the giants. Because of that, he has traveled to their hidden keeps and private dwellings. When he rides through the hills, he hears the ground rumbling as giants approach them. Brandon regards them as old friends, bowing and sharing their meals with them. When Brandon the Builder laid the foundations of the wall, a few of the giants had offered their services in exchange for lands and shelter away from the White Walkers. Bran was more than happy for this, and these giants laid the foundations of the wall and his other projects. Since then, they disappeared in the records of time, happy to remain isolated from the rest of the world. They only emerge during times of crisis, like defeating the rival kings and putting down the odd rebellion. But this is no simple rebellion, but a threat to the very existence of the North. Those thoughts run through his mind as he approaches the keep at the end of a series of valleys, and from there, a group of giants guard a wooden keep. Inside, a giant sits on a wooden throne and sips from his ale.
Great Gog Magog, I came here bearing requests for aid for my brother. War is upon the north, and it threatens the existence of not just the realms of man, but also the giants as well.
You speak boldly, little snowflake. Yet war has been a part of the Seven Kingdoms time and time again. What makes this time any different?
Dragons.
Dragons? What are dragons?
Great flying beasts. There is a king in the south who has started to unite the Seven Kingdoms under his banner. He's already conquered most of the realms south of the Neck. He's done this not with legions of men or hordes of cavalry, but due to these dragons. They soar above the sky, and their breath can burn men alive. They burned 2 such kings like that. One had hidden away behind his castle until the dragon burned him out of his keep. The other tried to rally an army against them, but faced the dragon fire.
You are a skilled storyteller, perhaps a better one than you are a hunter. You expect me to believe these tales?
You think I am lying?
I am, but your tale amuses me, so I shall not harm you. Have no fear. But you expect me to believe that there are these strange flying lizards? No, I think not.
Then ask yourself this, Your Grace. Why would I offer you these lies? What do I have to gain from it?
I am not certain. Perhaps you should tell me and be done with this business before I lose my patience.
You should then answer me this. Do you not owe my brother a great debt? During the harsh winters, when food became scarce, he opened his stores and ensured that your people were fed. He did that without expectation of coin or any reward.
Do you think that giants are foolish? We do not forget such things. But what does that matter?
Then ask yourself this. Do you think that my brother would make such a claim without reason? Is he the type of man to deceive and then lie to get what he wants?
No, he does not. Very well. What do you require?
To start, we request that several giants be sent to Moat Cailin to secure it from the assault. The rest shall journey to Winterfell, where King Torrhen is gathering his host.
The king of the giants considers for a moment, his body tensing as this must mean the giants must interact with humans. Gag Magog is not keen on this, but understands that there is more to the situation than he realizes, and agrees to these terms. Soon enough, several dozen giants march out from their mountain fasts. They first gather in Winterfell, where the lords all marvel and stare at these mighty creatures. Torrhen greets his brother like a returning hero, and expects that the giants were the special allies he was waiting for, and what they will use to beat the dragons back. Seeing this, morale in their army surges as the Northmen rally around them. But the army does not march, as several of these giants are sent to strengthen Moat Cailin, just in time too, as despite efforts to make peace with the dragons, Aegon rejects any terms proposed by Torrhen. Nothing less than total surrender will satisfy him. Aegon clenches his fist as he recalls the visions he saw shortly before his conquest. The words of his family prophecy ring in his mind. There shall be a prince who is promised. Aegon knows that this is his family, but the only way they have a chance to fulfill this prophecy is if they have a unified, stable realm. He has no illusions of grandeur. This was because of any desire to become king or belief in godhood was cool logic. His family's kingdom must be able to strengthen itself, and that will not be the case so long as the time of constant wars of the Seven Kingdoms persists. While Torrhen Stark might sincerely offer peace, it will not survive when he dies. The only way to end the time of warring kingdoms is to destroy the kingdoms themselves. While he focuses on the north, Visenya flies into the Vale in order to secure their submission, and Rhaenyra will handle Dorne. Neither sister requests aid from the army, happy to leave the soldiers for their invasion of the north, and he shall need it too, with how big it is. Lord Mooten leads the army up the neck alongside the new Frey allies and begins to probe Moat Cailin. Although Roderick Bolton has only 2,000 men, outnumbered 3-1 by the Iron Throne, they hold back the initial assault. John Mooten struggles to make much headway, as though his men move easily through the crumbling walls. They face off in a killing field as archers rain down fire upon them. Meanwhile, Crannogmen also join the efforts from the swamps, firing poisoned arrows and blow darts upon the advancing soldiers. The added attrition further wrecks morale and leaves some fearing leaving their camps, as they worry that simply going to relieve themselves can prove fatal. For 3 days, the young lord tries to force an opening in Moat Cailin, as the ground prevents him from conducting a siege. Finally, it becomes clear that this castle will not fall to siege, and will only fall to fire and blood. So, as their army pulls back, Balerion descends from the skies and falls upon the ancient fortress. Aegon raises Blackfire over his head and roars as the massive dragon opens its mouth. Fire falls upon the drunkard's tower, and though lichen and moss that grows upon the tower is instantly incinerated, and the stones that make the structure burn bright red, from the inside the men scream as they are cooked alive. Some desperately try to free themselves, but fire catches on their clothes and leaves them tumbling to the ground. Balerion crashes onto the drunkard tower, his claws digging into the already swaying tower and pushing it aside. The weight of the great beast is too much for the structure, and it begins to collapse. As he leans against the tower, a few archers from the other buildings take aim, but their arrows either bounce off it or are little more than cuts. Not even the Crannogmen can stop him and dare fire against him, but the giants do. They do not reveal themselves from the swamps, but instead pick up boulders and hurl them through the bogs. Aegon's eyes widen as rocks larger than himself narrowly miss him and explode around him. Debris and rubble rain around him as one strikes the drunkard's tower. He stands at the gaping holes where the giants had hurled their missiles. Peering through the opening, he tries to find what could possibly throw something like that. Could it possibly be that they were hidden siege weapons in the swamp? But he shakes his head. The ground was too soft to plant weapons like that. And then he sees shapes moving through the mist and disappear. Aegon urges Balerion back up and tries to avoid the second salvo. Just as he begins to gain altitude, another rock strikes Balerion across the flank. The blow isn't enough to take the massive dragon down, but it does unsteady him and leaves him tumbling. Still, this was the closest any of the kings had come to actually bringing down a dragon. And that angers Aegon. He grips the reins and urges Balerion back down. He will make them pay for that.
Dracarys!
With the attackers hidden in the swamps, he simply sets the area alight and is rewarded by a deep rumbling that he initially mistakes for more boulders being thrown, but realizes it is the screams of the attackers. This emboldens him and continues to rain down fire. Yet, while Aegon focuses on this threat, Roderick Bolton manages to withdraw his forces from the remaining towers in relatively good order, deeming Moat Cailin lost. By the time the sun sets, the remaining Northmen are either dead or escaped. This leaves the Targaryens in control of the main crossing point into the neck. Although Aegon's lords declare it a great victory, he knows better. Moat Cailin on its own is worthless, not when the Crannogmen are standing against them, preventing them from easily sending troops and supplies. They were not even able to slay the entire garrison. More importantly, one thing becomes clear. Torrhen Stark is as foolish as Mern, Argilac, or Harren the Black. This will not be as easy a war as he'd hoped. So Aegon sits in the Children's Tower, pondering what his next move will be, when a messenger announces that they have found the body of the attacker. The king has no idea how they managed to determine that until he actually approaches the creature, and his face falls at the sight of it. Though it was burned beyond recognition, the shape and size of the attacker is clear. This was no human. If 3 of his knights stood on each other's shoulder, this thing would still be larger. His body was charred almost beyond recognition, but he found patches of hair on the ground, thicker and shaggier than any human.
What is this? Nothing I've ever seen before, Your Grace. It certainly isn't human, but I've heard stories. Stories, brother? Aye. Some of the travelers from the Westerlands have claimed they heard tales of monsters and giants living in the wilderness. They've claimed to have seen them, but I doubt most would have seen more than just shadows lurking in the woods. They don't look like simple stories now, do they? No, they don't. It seems like this land is full of surprises. Even this victory isn't one I'd be boasting about in the taverns. Your honesty is appreciated as always, brother. So what do you suggest we do? Well, we'd best be treading carefully. There's no telling what other surprises might be waiting for us. We advance towards Winterfell and take it along with the other major settlements. The north is vaster than any land in the Seven Kingdoms. We must consolidate our rule, unless you want your dragons swallowed up by it.
Aegon can only nod as the rest of their army begins to march, advancing cautiously along the main path. They have archers along every interval, and Balerion remains ready to fly and set the forest on fire each time another attack comes. But despite this show of strength, their position is shaky. In the coming days, Aegon tries their diplomatic approach yet again. He tries to mimic his success in gathering allies with the Tullys and Tyrells, offering houses Manderly, Dustin, or Bolton a chance to serve as his new overlord if they join him. Yet, unlike the rest of the Seven Kingdoms, the Northmen are fully loyal to their king, and they refuse to even consider it. Lord Manderly refuses to even consider it, saying that they shall avenge the defeat in Moat Cailin. The Boltons are even blunter, sending the flayed skin of Aegon's ambassadors, and on it is a message from Lord Bolton, announcing he is looking forward to meeting them on the battlefield. Even the giants are unwilling to compromise. After hearing of their defeat and the death of one of his king, Gagmagok fully commits to the war effort, sending over 300 giants into the coming war. The only question is how they intend to fight. Torrhen agrees that fighting them in open battle is suicide, so they instead make use of the vast territories of the north to their advantage. Torrhen, Brandon, and Roderick divide their armies into smaller contingents, with each force placed in the command of a trusted lord, and they disappear into the vastness of the fords. They flee into the mountains, woods, rills, and valleys, where the dragons cannot reach them. But to those who cannot flee, they are ordered to obey the upstart king, for now. Castles are yielded, towns are ordered to surrender, and no one challenges the Dragon King openly. When he meets with the lords, he does not face any resistance. The most impressive capture is that of White Harbor, as Lord Manderly is instructed to yield to these invaders under the condition that supplies are still allowed to flow into the north to feed the people. However, they do not welcome him either. The lords will only provide supplies and guides, but no soldiers, claiming that northern men will not fight northern men. When Orys wishes to force them to serve, Aegon refuses to sanction this. Antagonizing them might only further alienate potential lords. The Conqueror has his men maintain strict discipline as they march, pressing deeper into Winterfell. Although they make good progress, the seat of House Stark remains deep inland, thousands of leagues by foot or by ship. This extends the supply lines of the Targaryen army, and that is where Torrhen's army begins to strike. Brandon and Gagmagok launch raids against the overextended supply trains, hitting them as they advance up the winding road. After already having to brave the neck, the prospect of facing giants is brutal for the men-at-arms. They struggle to form proper defensive formations. Shield walls are easily battered by these monsters. Pike squares can hold them back, but leave them vulnerable to northern bows, and slow-moving phalanxes allow them to flank their forces and destroy their supplies. The worst of these raiders is Lord Bolton, who happily brutalizes and tortures any Targaryen unlucky enough to fall into his hands, yet the others are no less fierce. Torrhen rides alongside a pair of direwolves named Snow and Storm, who seem less beasts of war and more extensions of his body. Meanwhile, Brendan is effectively able to coordinate with the giants, being treated like their own, and his reputation for forestry is legendary, making any Targaryen soldier fear facing him. Places that had previously been loyal to him also rise up in rebellion, slaying their garrison and preventing supplies from reaching him. Some houses simply refuse as well, especially more isolated houses like those of the Wolfswood and Northern Mountains. They openly attack the advancing Targaryen army before taking shelter in the unforgiving landscapes that many of Aegon's warriors are not used to. Some of these giants even dare to fire arrows upon the dragon. They prove more accurate than any ballista the Southerners have, but it is still not enough to bring the dragon down, and its sheer size allows him to simply shrug off whatever attacks they throw. While their advance stalls halfway through Winterfell, Aegon is not about to give up so easily. Any Northman unfortunate enough to fall into their hands will pay with fire. Balerion is simply too large to be brought down by these weapons and incinerates whole castles when they refuse. But these attacks, while satisfying, bring them no closer to victory, as the Northmen and their giants still prove elusive. Torrhen does not give the Dragon King the satisfaction of facing him in open battle. Instead, his attacks remain quick and elusive, yet the giant ensures that in every clash they do face, they have the local advantage and can at least harass the dragon. All of this bogs down the army, and rather than simply flying toward and capturing Winterfell, Balerion is forced to ride along the lines and protect supply caravans, limiting the destruction he can do. It doesn't hurt that many of the small folk still support Torrhen and Brandon, constantly supplying him with information and provisions. It soon becomes clear that his guerrillas are eating better than the Targaryens.
It appears Lord Marlon Manderley is requesting permission to close off his harbour and to eliminate the Targaryen garrison there. He is confident that he can remove them in a single battle and further strangle the Targaryen supply lines. No, White Harbour is just as much of our lifeline as it is there. Give them reason to remove it, and they will starve us as well. Tell Lord Marlon he must stomach the Targaryens a little while longer. The last thing we need is for the black dread of Aegon's to burn down our main port. Brendan, how fares the Giants? They are eager for this war, my lord. The Giants are keen on continuing the fight, but Gagmagog is saying his men struggle to piece together the Targaryen dragon tides. Even their best archers can't land more than a few hits, and those are incapable of doing more than annoying it. When they hurl boulders, he simply flies high enough that they cannot reach him, or turns his flames upon them. He's already lost a few of his best hunters to Balerion. It is just as I feared. Even our giants cannot bring that dragon down. But we have more giants than they have those flying beasts. For how long, my lord? We might have 100 giants for every one of their dragons, but are we prepared to lose 100 of them for every dragon we bring down? I doubt Gagmagog is, and so long as that beast remains in the air, we cannot secure our victory. Dragons cannot hope to hold the north alone. They do not need to hold it if they can burn it down. Balerion is already a match for our armies, but what of the other two? Once they arrive, we must struggle to keep all of them occupied. So far, they have left the villages intact, but what if they decide to burn them? Then we'll starve. Their supplies are already stretched beyond, as will we. The north does not grow enough to feed itself. Were we to lose what little we have, we may perish when winter comes. How frustrating. Too powerful to be defeated, yet not strong enough to achieve victory.
Yet whatever worries they might have, the Targaryens are also equally frustrated by their dilemma. It becomes clear that Aegon must switch tactics or risk his entire campaign floundering. From the recent captured castle of Hornwood, Aegon leans over a map of the north provided to him by Lord Manderley. Looking over its contents, he tries to think of a strategy. He suggests taking Balerion and riding ahead to capture Winterfell.
Even if King Torrhen does not use it now, its fall would be a punishing blow to morale. Perhaps enough to make some of those troublesome lords reconsider their alliance. And how do you plan to hold it? With Balerion? The infantry is already having a difficult time with you supporting us. Losing our dragon will be a disaster. Most of them won't even reach Winterfell. Is there really nothing you can do, brother? Not unless you want a mutiny on your hands. Most of the soldiers are freshly recruited from the Reach and Westerlands. They aren't keen on dying for the man who just conquered now. We could convince the Greyjoys to give us more naval support, perhaps promise them more lands from the north. No, my point is to end the wars. Promising lands like that can only sow more division and cause resentment. Can't you find a way to push these soldiers harder?
Now, there is no need to be so harsh on your brother, my king.
The door of the castle flies open and reveals two Targaryen sisters. Both of them are dressed for battle, garbed in red and black, their silver hair flowing beneath them. Visenya marches like a soldier, steeling herself. Rhaenys with the grace of a dancer. Although there is an agitation in the women's movements, Aegon rises to greet them, his battle plans momentarily forgotten as he pulls both women into his arms. He had received reports of their own missions and how both were prepared to join him here. Visenya was able to secure the peaceful surrender of the Vale, bringing it to its knees after intimidating the Lady of the Eyrie to yield her castle. Rhaenys' mission is far less successful, as Dorne refuses to yield, instead calling their bluff to invade, as their princess knows the Targaryens are too occupied dealing with the North to be able to do anything.
Their time will come, but first we must deal with the Northmen. Torrhen Stark is proving more troublesome than expected.
He does not fight any battles, simply raids and pillages our supplies as they march up the neck. The other knights and lords call it dishonorable and unchivalrous to fight like that.
They may call it whatever they like, but the tactic is effective. We have not been able to gain the upper hand in this clash because he refuses to face us, and our troops are paralyzed by these raids. Our guides say it is 16 days to Winterfell as the crow flies, but it might as well be across the narrow sea with the progress we are making. For this failure, you have my apologies.
I am not surprised. There is no need to be ashamed, though, Lord Oris. This type of war is a poor match for someone like you, who favors offensive actions and battles. This Torrhen is a troublesome fellow. He is not willing to burn for his pride, and has no wisdom to call upon forces that others call unnatural for victory. It is a shame, really. He is the first king we've encountered worthy of the title, and he must be our foe.
I'm glad you find the situation humorous, because we must find a way to put the fear of dragons in him.
It isn't the dragons they should be fearing. They will not fear them anymore. Tell me, what does the rest of the realm see when they see our dragons flying past?
Beasts.
Fire.
Fire.
All excellent answers, but what they see are gods. These are creatures from their wildest dreams, things they will never see up close unless it is to strike them down. We ravaged the greatest kingdoms and brought them low because of them. Yet, when you stormrode Kaelin, it was said that Balerion took a wound.
A minor one.
He bled for them. Gods do not bleed because once they do, people remember that they are just like them, just like their giants. No, trying to bring back the fear of dragons. We should bring back the fear of his people. Torrhen might be a king, but he cannot rule without people to rule over.
With that, the seeds of a new idea are placed in their heads. Slowly, the strategy shifts, and the effort to capture Winterfell is scrapped. The three dragons are split as Aegon and Visenya focus on targeting houses that have not yet surrendered to them. They do not target the Starks yet, but slowly take their bannermen out one by one. Meanwhile, Orys takes command of the ground army and uses them to regain control of the territory they've already seized. All lands north of the Salt Spear are abandoned temporarily as they focus on consolidating their gains. Garrisons and captured castles are strengthened, and in places where they have been violent, Orys begins to use more violent tactics to get them to yield. Small folk are detained and punished, with entire villages being captured. From there, they are either forcibly relocated or their towns turned into prisons. Meanwhile, houses deemed unimportant and those that have already been confirmed to take action against the Targaryens are simply burned to the ground. However, they do not destroy all of them. In fact, the Targaryens intentionally allow small folk to escape, fleeing into the same woods and mountains where the North's armies hide. While Torrhen is a brilliant commander, he is still a Stark and cannot bear to see his people suffer like this. His men ride out to rescue them, bringing them into his camps just as Aegon predicted. His responses vary. Sometimes Balerion and Vhagar descend through the clouds and unleash fire upon them. Sometimes Orys has his cavalry smash into them and scatter the Northmen, and other times there is no reaction as he allows this to happen. Yet, for every small folk the Northmen rescue, that is more mouths to feed and fewer people to work the fields in order to keep their armies fed. With the Targaryen forces no longer advancing, their supply lines are shortened, making it easier to bring food by barges. This allows them to become less reliant on White Harbor and begin to enact harsher measures to keep the Manderleys in line. Curfews are set, all barges are inspected and placed under escort, and Lord Manderley is practically a prisoner in his city. While resentment brews, this puts greater strain on Torrhen, who cannot easily gather supplies. Seeing this, freeing White Harbor now becomes his priority, and they begin making efforts to find ways to finally bring the dragons down. The king in the north reaches out to one remaining kingdom, free of the dragon's rule, Dorne. He knows of their prowess in making poisons and writes to them, urging them to create a concoction that can bring down even a dragon. To help them, he sends them samples of dragon's blood and scales left behind from the ensuing battles. The Dornish recognize this threat and agree to help. They begin working on a poison that can bring down one of the greatest beasts. The task is harder than expected, as they know little of dragons, and their effort is met with mixed success. They do create a poison, but it can only incapacitate it rather than kill it, and they only made enough for one dragon. The rest will take many months to create. Still, Brandon decides to take it and develop a plan. He waits until Balerion is attacking House Glover and Roderick is drawing Vhagar towards the Dreadfort to strike. Torrhen seizes Old Castle and uses it as a base to threaten White Harbor, forcing Rhaenys to respond, and this is where Brandon springs his trap. The youngest Targaryen is eager to make up for her failure in Dorne and rides out, hoping to punish them. She rides towards the castle with a position of White Harbor's garrison. They surround the castle as Meraxes sets fire to the surrounding defenses that were prepared, also allowing Orys to advance. Yet, along the way, Torrhen rides out, snow and storm by his side, ripping apart horses and scattering the formations of knights, letting his infantry rush forward and pick them off. Meanwhile, Brandon calmly takes up positions in the heights with Gamagog and a few giants.
We lost many warriors to these beasts. Will your plan work?
Come now, my friend. When have I ever let you down?
This is not some game, a little snow. Many of my kin perished to these beasts. I will not forgive them for it. Nor will I forgive you if this plan does not work.
I won't forgive myself if it doesn't work. I lost many friends to this war. Now prepare yourselves.
Just as he says that, the air is filled with the shrieks of white death. Meraxis bellows as her fire gushes from her jaws, looking almost white. It does not target the soldiers themselves, but their point of retreat in Oldcastle. A few arrows and ballista bolts fire in response to her arrival, but those can do little to actually stop the assault, as that fire ignites the wooden sections of the castle and sends more men into panic. A few giants roar defiantly as they pick up boulders and hurl them at her, yet Meraxis is far more graceful than Brendan and dodges these strikes. As she circles for another pass to finish off these giants, the ridge where Brendan and the others have hidden themselves erupts with fire as half a dozen giants each loose arrows. These oversized missiles are tipped with a sticky black substance that could kill a bull and bring down even these monsters. However, all 6 shots miss, and Rhaenys avoids them. She registers the new threat and redirects her dragon to target. The first jet takes a giant as he reloads, the creature falling into the ground. Gagmagog roars angrily and tries to throw a boulder. This explodes close to the dragon's wing, sending shrapnel into its flank. Meraxis roars in outrage, and then the next attack threatens to set the hill on fire. Brendan stands atop a boulder, roaring and ordering the giants as he directs them to fire. He's nearly killed, but Gagmagog rushes in front of him and takes the back brunt of the attack. He roars in pain and drops to his knee as Brendan shouts his name. But somehow the giant finds his footing and grips his bow. Half the ridge is already on fire when he regains his bearings, but Gagmagog smiles.
Run, little Snow. Head back to your brother, and tell him that this victory shall be his.
He does not wait to see if Brandon obeys. Instead, he strings his bow and takes aim at the dragon as he attacks yet again. Fire singes above his head as Meraxis focuses on the other giants. Taking a deep breath, he looses and watches the arrow whistling through the air and strikes the dragon across the side. Meraxis roars in pain, her attack pausing and howling in agony as the arrow buries itself halfway through her body. Rhaenys turns toward the attacker, who makes no effort to retreat and instead drops his bow and spreads his arms out as the fire consumes him. However, Meraxis' victory is short-lived, as when Gagmagog falls, he watches as the dragon begins to lose altitude. The young Targaryen urges her to keep flying, but as exhaustion threatens to take hold all at once, she begins to stumble. It takes all of her effort not to collapse outright, but moving into a controlled descent, crashing into the earth and throwing Rhaenys off the saddle, injured but alive. Lord Manderly watches this from his castle and sees this as a signal. He sends word out across the city for an uprising as the people rise up against the Targaryen garrison and slaughter them all. They even stream out and send knights to help slaughter the forces hunting their king. Orys barely escapes with his remaining forces as many people turn towards the fallen dragon. They are surprised to see her still alive, but many are keen to end that, along with killing the princess. Yet when the first mob approaches, a direwolf growls as Snow leaps in between them. Storm snarls and circles around them while Torrhen descends from his position.
None shall harm her. This woman and her dragon are now my captives, and their fate is in my hands.
Soon enough, Rhaenys is imprisoned in White Harbor, with Brendan as her jailer, while Meraxis is also kept sedated with poison sent from Dorne. It keeps her too ill to breathe fire and too disoriented to escape. However, the bastard of Winterfell treats the princess with surprising gentleness, constantly visiting her and regaling her with stories of giants and songs from his wood harp. While Aegon hears of this, the king is thrown into a fury as he orders Balerion and Vhagar to burn every castle and village they can get their hands on. But the greatest victory comes not from the dragons, but from Orys. The grizzled warrior manages to escape with a portion of his army and regroups with the Targaryen dragons close to Castle Serwyn, which they quickly seize. But that isn't enough for them, so they turn their gaze to Winterfell. The castle only has a small garrison of less than 100 men. Rather than burn it, Aegon and Orys coordinate their strike. The two dragons circle overhead, burning Wintertown and launching stray bursts of fire to keep the men occupied, while Orys and his surviving men scale the walls. They hurry forward and rush to the gatehouse. Without their lord or most of their men, the castle falls within the hour, and at long last the Targaryens have the capital of the north. Although a great victory on paper, in reality it amounts to little, as this buys them nothing. They have no hostages, no gold, or even provisions to hold it for long, as these men have fled far inland, surpassing their supply lines, which remain under threat. Yet the humiliation that King Torrhen is facing is real. Even with a dragon in captivity, many small folk are calling for blood, demanding that Rhaenys be executed for her crimes. Many lords are inclined to agree, and keeping her alive is seen as an act of weakness on his part. Worse still is the destruction has left much of his people homeless, and without the means of rebuilding. Rather than drag out the war, Torrhen demands a negotiation so they may discuss terms. If Aegon refuses, he will have Meraxes killed and allow her head to be paraded across the Seven Kingdoms. The threat is more than an idle boast. The Vale, Iron Islands, Stormlands, Westerlands, and the Reach were all brought low because of Dragonfire. To see one of those great beasts fall would incite many houses in rebellion, and Aegon would need to begin his conquest all over again. Faced with this prospect, Aegon agrees to discuss terms. The meeting shall take place in White Harbor. Soon enough, the war grinds into a halt as the two sides agree to meet with one another. Lord Manderley has a great pavilion overlooking the harbors set out where the two kings meet. To everyone's surprise, the two men are cordial when they see each other.
A shame you were born a wolf. I would have been proud to call you a brother, and prouder to have you flying alongside me. Your words are kind, Your Grace. I admit I have faced many foes throughout my life, but none have been able to vex me as much as you can. I can see how you managed to wrangle these quarrelsome kingdoms together. Through Dragonfire? No. Through force of will. 100 kings have long sought to create a single realm from this continent, but they are all talk. To them, this conquest is nothing more than a simple dream. It is different for a man to make it a reality. Only a certain sort of man can make that happen.
And what sort of man might that be?
Those who possess a childlike gleam in their eye that does not care for what odds might be, and those who possess a single-minded drive to achieve their goal. With the kind words you offer, I hope it means you intend to surrender. Not at all. I have not taken part in these conflicts, for I have little care about events down south. I do not care whether your conquest succeeds or not. I certainly am not about to give up my crown without a fight.
So what do you propose?
I have 100 giants for every dragon you have, and yet I have almost lost 100 of them to bring down one of your dragons. Were we to continue, it would leave both these creatures extinct, and more magic from this world shall be lost. So I propose this, a trial by 3, 1 for each of your dragons. 3 champions shall duel to determine the fate of my kingdom. If you win, I shall yield my crown. But if I win, you and your descendants must swear never invade the north again. You think I would gamble with my sister's life? On the contrary, she is not part of this bargain. I will release her as a gesture of goodwill. This battle is only to determine your willingness to pursue your dream. You speak with much fire in your heart, Wolf. It makes me wonder whether or not you have a drop of dragon's blood in you. But your terms are acceptable. I accept.
Soon enough, a private courtyard is cleared for the duel to happen as the 3 champions step forward. On one side, Aegon Targaryen stands calm, Blackfire at his hip. To his left, Visenya owns the edge of Dark Sister, while Orys Baratheon hefts his greatsword. Opposite them, Torrhen Stark sits quietly, sharpening his longsword. Beside him, Roderick holds his slender longsword and a dagger, and on the other side is Brynden Snow, clad in hunter's leathers, knocks an arrow to his bow with a faint smile. He offers Rhaenys a wink, who is seated in a balcony beside Lord Manderley. No horns sound. A nod between the kings is the only signal. The first to advance is Visenya and Roderick, who circle each other. The Lord of the Dreadfort advances toward her, feeling the sudden thrust of Dark Sister that nearly cuts through his ringmail. Roderick leaps back from the attack and then tries to counter. He feints low and follows with a vicious thrust at Visenya's throat. The Queen parries these, Dark Sister singing in her hands as she pushes the blade aside and then pivots away from the dagger. Her movements are closer to a dance than a warrior, but Roderick does not give her room to recover. He is quick, relentless, using his dagger to trap her blade, aiming to get inside her guard. He raises his sword up, aiming to cut her down, but Visenya has fought more battles than he has had nightmares. She slams her fist into his nose and sends Roderick stumbling back. The woman lunges at the Lord of the Dreadfort. Her blade moves like lightning, the Valyrian steel lending her strength and speed, driving the Bolton Lord until Dark Sister flashes, sending his blade flying. Her pummel cracks against his wrist, and the backswing sends his dagger following. Visenya places the point of her sword at his chest, over his heart. She does not push. The yield is silent in his eyes. First blood to the dragon. The next match opens just as quickly, as Orys charges, a bull of a man, his sword a blur. Brynden does not meet him. He follows backward, an arrow loosed. It does not strike Orys, but thuds to his shield. Orys roars and closes in. Brynden is not there. He moves like mist, and his own sword flashes and pushes his blade aside. Their blades clash a dozen times as Brynden continues to step back, even as his sword aims rattles from the force of these blows. The two bastards roar and clash, but as they get in close, Orys has the upper hand and barrels into Brendan, sending him sprawling. Orys takes a deep breath and fingers his sword, but Brendan does not come forward and turns to run instead. He dives towards his bow and knocks it in a second. Orys is upon him in an instant, but not fast enough to stop the arrow thumping on his shoulder. He swings wildly, overbalances, buying him time. In that moment, Brendan drops his bow and draws his two hunting knives. He darts in, stabbing wildly, and twirls his blade as Orys is disoriented. A slash at the back of Orys' knee finds a gap in the plate. The Conqueror's half-brother stumbles, falls to one knee. Brendan is behind him in an instant, a knife at his throat, the other dislodging the sword from his grip. Orys' face is crimson with rage and shame. The north side erupts in a low, fierce cheer. The score is even. The kings step forward. There are no more words. Torrhen's greatsword sweeps out, and locks with Blackfire. The Valyrian steel leaves the ground, rattling as he pushes back. Torrhen stumbles, and the king is upon him again, his sword cutting at his head. The king in the north brings his sword up just in time to intercept the strike. His muscles strain to hold his attack, and tries to twist the sword around, and tries to ram his shoulder into him. Aegon stumbles from the blow, and Torrhen follows up and brings his sword at the dragon king's chest. Though his armor absorbs most of these attacks, there is still pain, and the king grits his teeth. Torrhen follows and lands a blow that crumples the dragon scale pauldron on Aegon's shoulder. When he tries to follow with another attack aimed at his side, however, Aegon leaps back and thrusts his sword up, opening a gash on Torrhen's cheek. As they pull back, they are both bleeding, breathing hard. Torrhen tries to advance on him, but Aegon's speed begins to tell. He parries a downward chop and spins inside Torrhen's guard. He follows with a brutal kick to the stomach that makes the king in the north gasp. Blackfire comes up, then down in a final, decisive arc, but it stops a hair's breadth from Torrhen's neck. Aegon lowers Blackfire. He sheathes his sword and offers a hand. Puzzled, Torrhen takes it and is pulled to his feet.
You fought for your home. I fight for all homes. There is a philosophy, older than any of the kingdoms here. A song of ice and fire, of a winter that brings not snow, but an endless night. An enemy that makes your giants and my dragons seem like children's toys. They say only a child of ice and fire can stop it. I am not certain what that means, except this. Our houses must cooperate if we are to survive. You said there are two sorts capable of uniting the realm. I know what I am, and that is why I offer you this mercy, so we may unite this realm.
Torrhen stares, the truth of it settling in his bones like a sudden frost. To some, this might be a simple story, but he knows better. There have been things, reports from the Night's Watch. He still recalls the legends that resulted in the wall. He once might have dismissed it, but that is before he saw the dragons.
Then let us make a pact. The North bows to the Iron Throne. We are part of the Seven Kingdoms, but our laws are our own. Our customs stand. We rule ourselves, as kings in your name. We are your shield, Aegon, but you must be our sword. Then it is done. By this trial the war is ended. Torrhen Stark, I name you Warden of the North and King of Winterfell. Your line shall rule the North. When the realm calls, you will answer, and when winter comes, we will face it together.
Aegon extends his hand once more. Torrhen grips his forearm, and Aegon grips his. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you'd like to join us on this journey across the Seven Kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.